Give us a sense of what you're hearing in terms of what's happening at the Ambassador Bridge right now.
Well, we do have some access to the Ambassador Bridge for U.S.-bound truck traffic off what I would call a back entrance. But the main access point continues to be closed by the protesters. And anyone who is looking to cross the Ambassador Bridge from the United States into Canada, that access point is shut off entirely. And so it's worth noting that this is Canada's busiest international border crossing, about 10,000 trucks a day. A lot of commerce crosses this bridge, and being the home to the automotive capital of Canada, we are also home to a lot of just-in-time delivery for the auto and the auto parts sector, and having this kind of closure certainly can't last for very long.
Mayor Dilkens, are you able to put that into numerical context for us? Do you have any sense of how many cars are just sort of waiting to get through, how many trucks, and how much this is costing everybody?
Well, the commercial traffic that crosses every day is about $300 million. So it is a material number any way you cut it. And it's one thing to protest and to set up and be an annoyance in the streets of Ottawa. It's another to come in and shut down the international border crossing where a large majority of Canadian trade flows. And so we're doing our best. The Windsor Police are doing their best to work with the protesters. But I would submit that, you have some folks who are making irrational decisions, and you're trying to find a sensible or rational solution, but you're not working with rational actors in every case, and that further complicates the situation on the ground.
To the best of your knowledge, what are these protesters asking for specifically?
It really seems to be a hodgepodge. So there's some that are really held up with the whole vaccine mandate idea, and then it seems to have morphed to really an anti-government type protest. And it really touches all sorts of frustrations that some folks have with all levels of government, from the municipal government, provincial government, and all the way up to the federal government. And so I'm not sure that if you sat down and said, what are your top 3 issues, that you'd get the same 3 issues from 50 people if you sat them down. So it makes it frustrating to try and find a solution. But what we're trying to do right now is keep at least a lane open in each direction of traffic to and from the Ambassador Bridge so that commerce to our country and to the United States can continue.
You mentioned Ottawa just a moment ago, and that really has been the center of the conversation around these protests. We know in Ottawa it has really affected the operations of businesses, how people go about living their lives. People can't sleep. And I just wonder if you can put in relation what's happening in Windsor for you. Is it the same sort of thing? Are residential areas being impacted, or is this something sort of off in the distance, not really impacting businesses?
There are some residential homes not too far from Huron Church Road, which is the name of the road that leads to and from the Ambassador Bridge. And so we have received a number of complaints from residents today who had to experience, what I would call bad behavior last night. And so we're dealing with that. But I think from an Ottawa, if we're comparing Ottawa to Windsor in terms of the residential impact, it's much greater in Ottawa because there are just more people in their downtown area.
And Mayor, a lot of people who live in Windsor work in Detroit. And we're talking about essential caregivers, we're talking about nurses, there's all kinds of folks that need to get into the U.S. I imagine all of that is being impeded?
So that is certainly frustrating for a lot of folks. And during the pandemic, about 1,200 healthcare workers crossed from Windsor to work in Detroit each and every day. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when there was talk about closing the entire border down, including to essential workers at one point, we were told acutely that there would be hospitals in Detroit, entire hospitals that would have to close down if those workers could not cross to get to work. And so we do have another option. We do own, the City of Windsor owns our half of the Windsor-Detroit tunnel. So there is access for vehicles to get through to Detroit, and that source, there is no backup there right now, but we have made contingency plans in the event that the blockade does try and get to the tunnel access point and block access to the Windsor-Detroit tunnel. We will still be able to get essential healthcare workers across to Detroit because the work that they do is helping to save lives, and it just can't be tolerated having that choked off. So we've got contingency plans there, and we hope not to have to use them, but we will if we need to.
What are you going to do, Mayor, if these protesters are like the protests we've seen in Ottawa and they say, we're not leaving? What's the plan? What are you going to do?
Well, I think we're going to do what most sensible people would say you should do, is try and negotiate a way through this, trying to, see if we can get access to and from the Ambassador Bridge, even if it's just one lane, to allow traffic to continue. That would be the most reasonable approach in the short term, but long term, this can't be sustained. This is too vital of an economic link to both nations, and something will have to be done, and it's vital to my own community with the just-in-time delivery in the auto sector. And so, we're going to work through this. We're going to be fair and reasonable to the extent that we can be, but this cannot be allowed to continue for very long, and certainly we're going to need some federal intervention. This is not a regular roadway in a municipal jurisdiction. This is a critical, essential route to an international border crossing that is the backbone of Canada's economy.
Well, to that point, the federal transport minister just said earlier this morning that they'll try and support you in any way that they can, but this is really a municipal or perhaps a provincial issue. So are you in talks with the federal government or even with the Premier at this point?
So we've got calls set up with the Premier. We're trying to line all of these things up. We have certainly sent up smoke signals through the federal channels with what we're requesting down here in terms of the number of officers, additional officers that we need in terms of support. OPP does have a liaison team down in the city of Windsor right now, so they're getting briefed up and will be out on the streets trying to work with the organizers of the protest to find a reasonable solution forward. And I'm hopeful that this does not escalate any further, that we're able to de-escalate the situation, get people to move on, and get the economy moving again. This again, I'll say it probably the 10th time. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but this cannot be allowed to continue. This is a vital backbone to Canada's economy, and this cannot be resolved solely by municipal resources.
Okay. Mayor Drew Dilkens of Windsor, Ontario, thank you so much for your time, sir.
My pleasure.